Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the channel. We have a 8-game MLB slate today, and you're saying, what MLB? What are you covering right now? Sal, you're into the MLB? Yeah, so right now we're going to be covering the MLB today. There is no NBA as we have the NCAA Championship basketball. I haven't watched a single game, a single second of the tournament. Shame me if you will. I have no interest there. There's no basketball tonight. There's two 11-game slates, I believe. 11-game slates. The next 2 days, tomorrow and then Wednesday to close out the season for the NBA. I'm going to miss it, but we will cover MLB today because there's a nice 8-game slate. There's some juicy spots overall, just looking quickly. But I will say that I'm not going to cover it as in-depth as I will probably by next week when the NBA season is over and it's just smaller slates for the playoffs for the NBA. That's when I'll get into mainly guys, individual hitters' salaries, and just individual matchups, things like that. I don't usually look at that too much anyways for MLB, but I'll cover it. I'll give you sort of a primer for today. Let you know totals, whether pitchers in good spots based on the teams they're playing, statistics, based on their own individual statistics, potential stack spots, things like that. So it'll be a primer, short video. My video is usually 20-25 minutes. This one might only be in the teens. You're saying thank God to yourself right now. There you go. If you're one of those people who hate the longer videos. Yeah, if this is your first time to the channel, I should say welcome to the channel. My name is Sal, cover daily fantasy sports, NFL, can't wait for the NFL, NBA, love the NBA, MLB, I'm not so much into the MLB compared to the NBA and the NFL, but I'm excited to kind of get into it and just use different strategies than I have in the past, mainly just heavier into stacks, single entry tournaments, and attack a stack that is not as highly owned as we will see with one on this slate today. And also the WNBA. Believe it or not, I cannot wait for the WNBA. There is a lot of edges to be had. There is not a lot of research out there in the WNBA. So if you could find it and stick to it every single day, you can make some nice profits. Obviously not as big of tournaments or wins as you potentially could have compared to other sports because there's just not as much interest. But in terms of head-to-heads, you can max out your $1 or $2 entries and win a good amount in WNBA. I dabbled in it a little bit last summer, nowhere near as in-depth with charts and things like that, and did okay. I'm looking to do even better. So a month away about the WNBA. So yeah, you can make your jokes if you want. It's a good sport to play DFS for. So let's get into it. Like I said, it is more so a primer. If you're new here, and you probably are because, or at least some of you might be because it's baseball, right? And I haven't made too much baseball content. So hit me with a like button, drop down in the comments and let me know if you just discovered me based on this baseball content. I think that's pretty cool. I want to see what the reach is on this. Hit me with a like, go into the Discord. We have a Discord. It's linked down below, totally free. It's about 400 people in there talking all different sports. The golf chat's going to start to heat up as the Masters approaches. I will probably play the Masters. I'm doing some research on that today, as there's not as much to do for me based on the fact that there's no NBA. So yeah, check out some of my other videos. I have some DFS strategy videos, and I have, you can see above this sheet I have on Patreon. I will have projections in a week or two, potentially. I'm not sure if I really want to release projections because it's just not as a projectable sport, baseball, but there's stuff there. Again, I've babbled enough. Let's get into it. So I'm going to scroll. This is a pretty long sheet. I'll just scroll through some of the things. This is my target offense sheet. For those of you that are familiar with me, I have one for basketball. I love it. You guys seem to enjoy it, and girls. So this one will be more of the baseball version, and again, it will get sharpened up as the season goes on, added some things, subtract some things, but for right now, this is where we're at early in the season. So we have all the starting pitchers, and I think in baseball, looking at the pitchers is by far the best way to start and probably the way to do the majority of your research because, one, they're going to impact the batter. Yeah, you could have great batters and you could assume great stacks based on game totals and things like that, but there's going to be some slates where there's a lot of nice game totals. Like today, there's so many over 8 or above, or 9 even and above. There's multiple game totals there, about 4 of them. So differentiating between stacks is going to come down to the pitchers that they're playing, in my opinion, not individual matchups so much so. Maybe if a team all has a great matchup against a pitcher, then sure. But I'm not going to weigh one guy out of the 5 I want to stack being great against a pitcher, or 3 being terrible against a pitcher. I'm not going to weigh that in a vacuum. I'll weigh it against the other stacks out there, and I'll really just rely more so on the pitcher's stats there. And what I mean by that is what we'll get into it. K percentage, walk percentage, and just some other things that we'll get into. Batted balls in play, FIP, things like that, whip. So let's just start looking at it. You can see right here we have all the pitchers. Andrew Kashner, RIP Andrew Kashner, Soul, absolutely dreadful, and that's indicated in the price. You also have Homer Bailey, RIP Homer Bailey, that's also indicated in the price of 5K. So you have a lot of pitchers to choose from, right? You have 16. And the way that you want to go about DFS MLB is you want to focus on finding, at least in my opinion, value pitchers one value pitcher probably, and then one stud pitcher that you can rely on, unless it's a slate where you feel good about stacking some lower owned offenses. You want to go about finding at least one value pitcher, dig through data, dig through matchups, whatever it might be, and then one stud pitcher, and then find your stacks from there. I think it comes down to, and I think a lot of people don't like finding those value pitchers. They'd rather go with the studs, who are going to be probably more reliable, probably get you 30 to 40 ceiling games, point ceiling games. And yeah, then you have to have them probably. But there also are, the standard deviation for pitchers at least is not that wide compared to hitters. A hitter can score 0 points, or they can score 40 points. A pitcher is probably not likely to score 0 points unless they're just getting blown up and go negative. For the most part, they're probably going to get into the teens, and they have the ability to go to 30. So that standard deviation is just less. So paying up for a pitcher doesn't matter as much as paying up for a hitter, I would say. So, because you're going to get more pitchers that all have that same standard deviation for the most part, whereas for some hitters, not everybody has a Mike Trout or a Aaron Judge or a Giancarlo Stanton standard deviation from 0 to 40. Most hitters probably have realistically like 0 to 20. So, in terms of fantasy points. So you can start there. The next thing, I think the biggest thing early in the season when we don't have as much data to really see how the year is shaping out, how pitchers are doing, 1 or 2 starts really isn't that great of a sample size, especially for batters. We have a little bit more data now. They're starting to get 40 at-bats or so. So the data is coming in nicely. I really like to get around 100 at-bats before I start digging into it. So probably another 2 or 3 weeks before I'll feel confident using this year's data. So still using last year's data, but in terms of Vegas, this is for today. And you're going to see anytime, it's always relative to the slate. So if every single team's projected for 7 total runs every single game, and one of them's projected for 8, well then obviously 8 on that slate is the one to target, or at least the one that will be targeted the most. Here you can see that we have a lot of juicy matchups. Part of that is because there's some bad pitchers playing. Part of that is because Coors Field is on the docket today. So you can see Coors obviously is always going to attract some things. You have a 10.5 implied run total. That is by far the highest on the slate by a run or more. And we know this. Everybody knows this at this point. And if you're not familiar with MLB DFS, Coors Field is just fantasy goodness. It is a place to always target. The ball flies out of Coors Field. But the prices on DraftKings and probably FanDuel, I imagine FanDuel, have indicated this now. They're built in. If you're playing on Coors Field, you're going to be more expensive. Even if you're a shitty 8 hitter, you're going to be more expensive. And we could just look at it right now quickly. I haven't looked at any salaries today for individual players in terms of hitters. And you can see all the prices are up. The lineups are not out yet, but you got 4 guys in the 5K range. That's pretty excessive. If we just go to all hitters, if we go to all hitters, you're going to see, I mean, just in terms of Atlanta guys for the Braves, there's going to be 4 in like the top 8 or top 10, when on most slates, those guys are nowhere even near that, right? That's because they're playing on Coors Field, and that's pretty obvious. So obviously a game to target. Now, if you're stacking, like 40% of the field doesn't even stack. So you can still stack Coors Field and feel good about it. Both teams have the highest implied run total. You also have Oakland with a 5.1 tied with Atlanta, but then you have the biggest one being the Rockies at 5.6 playing at home. So the run totals is obvious there, but you have a lot of other pivot spots on the slate. You have 2 9.5 run totals, you have 2 9 run totals, you have an 8 and an 8.5. Those are all pretty healthy run totals for the MLB. And Vegas is good at what they do, but all these games are not going to land on those run totals. I would not be shocked if one of these 9.5 end up being the highest implied totals on the entire slate by the end of the day. Realistically, once the games are played. So obviously Coors Field, I'm not going to tell you not to play it, but just keep in mind, those guys are going to be priced up. If you want to play the Coors Field stack, you're going to be paying a big premium because of it. Now, obviously the outcomes and the total and what Vegas is projecting is favorable for you, and more times than not, it'll probably hit. But what is that more times than not? Based on the fact that there's some 9.5 spreads on this slate and a 9 or game totals, is that more times than not than 60% of the time? Because if that's the case, I would much rather take the 40% of the time that it doesn't hit and go to one of these lower owned stacks, especially if they're cheaper. So that's something to keep an eye on. I'm curious with now the prices coming up so much to see what the data will look like in terms of people stacking Coors Field still, because people know that everybody does it now. And by everybody, I mean the people that do stack. But there's ways to go around it differently, and that's just simply to have less stacks. If you're playing one lineup tonight or in a single entry, I probably don't stack Coors Field because you're not getting any leverage on the people who are stacking. It's probably going to come in over 10% owned in stacks when you're going to get one of these nine run games, because there's 4 of them, or 3 9-run games and an 8.5. One of those is going to come in just dirt low because there's just so many options. Figure out the one that'll come in dirt low, take a shot on it in a 1 lineup. That's what I would do. You can see in terms of stacking, obviously Oakland's in a great spot against Andrew Cashner. Cashner And we can look at the stats quickly. Cashner, terrible. 4th worst on the slate. Yeah, 4th worst on this. Oh, no. I got that wrong. Worst on the slate in terms of strikeouts through 9 innings and strikeout percentage. Oakland, you can see right here, they strike out the least on the slate. Well, 2nd least on the slate. Bottom 3, actually. Messed that both up. I was trying to look. The thing that stinks about Google Slides is you can't condition format percentages. And maybe you can. Drop down if you know how. You can't like do this color format to see where the best matchups are. I can't get it to work for percentages. But Oakland, a team that has not striked out that much this year, 17.6%. The league average is around 20% right now. Go obviously below average, and they're facing a pitcher who does not strike them out. Now, that's obviously bad news for Cashner, probably not a guy I'd want to target, and that's great news for Oakland. The more balls that you're going to put in play, the better. And it seems like that this is a matchup where there's going to be less than their team average in strikeout percentage because Cashner just does not have a put-away pitch, and overall, he's just going to leave some meatballs right down the middle for this team to just smash. So right off the bat, if you want to fade that Coors Field or pivot away from it in one lineup or under-own it if you're entering 150, Oakland makes a ton of sense, and that probably stands out based on their total of 5.1 and the fact that they're playing Andrew Cashner. But that's one of the biggest things I look at is, can this guy strike players out? Because if he sucks, but he can strike players out, there's at least upside there, right? Even if he gives up a run or two and he gets 8 to 10 Ks, that's pretty good. Using last year's data for pitchers because they haven't had a ton of starts yet, I'll scroll over. So I'll explain what this is. This is just last year's data for all the pitchers. It's advanced pitching stats. Again, you can get this above MLB projections. I'll be updating it daily now. And then this is advanced hitting stats for this year. And I'll be actually, and we could probably make these smaller. There we go, made them a little bit smaller. And I'll actually be updating these and adding more to it, like I said, as the time goes on. But you can see right here, K percentage for that team. So Baltimore strikes out 25% of the time. That's their team individually. Oakland only strikes out 17.6% of the time. They are playing the Baltimore pitcher in Andrew Cashner, who on this slate has had the worst strikeout rate last year at only 5.82 over 9 innings. So that means he's going to strike out like 2 guys if he just goes the normal 5.5, 6 innings, or 5 1/3, 6 innings today. So obviously a great spot to target, the best spot probably off of that game, but it will probably be higher owned in terms of stacks, but I'm fine going there. The Oakland guys are in a phenomenal spot tonight. In terms of projections, if you're trying to look at this, don't go by it. It's going off of just some of these pitchers' starts that are only 2 starts so far. Once we have about 5 to 10 starts in there, these numbers will start to become a little bit more true, but I wouldn't go off of them just yet if you're trying to kind of like screenshot them or whatever. Go ahead and do it. You can screenshot this whole thing. So, ballpark factor, obviously each ballpark is it hitter friendly or pitcher friendly. That goes into my projections. In terms of weather, I'll hit on that quickly for the whole slate. Everything looks good today. Yankees playing in a dome, only team in a dome, but that's fine. All the other spots, 70 degrees and warm. Only spot that's a little bit concerning is Atlanta and the Giants, but it's only a slight concern because it's the only game with precipitation today. 33% rain, still going to be nice there. I would not worry too much about that. San Francisco really never gets rain, so I would be shocked, or I would be surprised if that 33% held true. So overall, nothing really major. Just keep an eye on that if you do want to play guys in that game. I imagine you'll be targeting more so the pitchers, maybe Mad Bumgarner, who is only $9,300 here. Yes, one of the more expensive guys on the slate, but not the most expensive. And when you factor in his run total is the lowest on the slate with 7, going up against the Padres, who have an implied run total of 3.4. It slowly makes Bumgarner, Mad Bum, that guy that I want to target. And I imagine a lot of other people will jump on that as well. Look, he's 9.3, which is expensive, but if you could find a lower owned stack in terms of offenses, and I don't know what all these salaries look like for individual teams yet, but I imagine you're going to be finding guys in this Angels and Milwaukee Brewers. So the Brewers line up at 8.5, 4.4 implied run total. I imagine you're going to be finding some nice totals there for them, or some nice salaries in terms of trying to stack them. If you want to go to the opposite side, you can go against Milwaukee. You can go with the Angels, who you're going to be going up against Milwaukee's pitcher, who's only getting 7.29 Ks through 9, which is right around league average, so it's nothing scary to look at. Again, implied run total of 4.2, 4.4 is pretty good. Now, when you compare it to the 5.5s or the 5.6s and the 5.1s that we have on some of these other games, not as great, obviously, but again, that's where you have to find the lower salary guys if you want to be able to afford a Mad Bum. Mad Bum at 9,300 is looking out. He's standing off of the page right now to me as one of the more quality pitchers. Obviously, at 10.4, you're going to get Verlander. He is the most expensive guy in the slate for pitchers. He's the most expensive guy overall in the slate in terms of hitters, too. And here's the thing. He's priced up to where he should be, I would say, especially for this matchup. He dominates the Yankees. I'm a Yankees fan, dominates them. This Yankees team strikes out extremely, extremely higher than the league average. This Yankees team is striking out right now at a clip of around 23%. Verlander is striking out opponents 12.2 through 9 innings as of last year. So you want to break that down. If he goes 7 today, he's going to strike out 8 Yankee batters, or somewhere around there. Yeah, he's in a great spot today. Going up against Tanaka, this is not an automatic win spot for them, but the Yankees have an implied run total. Think about this, 3.4 for the Yankees today. That's crazy. Now, obviously, they've taken on some injuries, but they just hit 7 homers yesterday or whatever it was. They still have some bats there. So if you ever want to get a low-owned Yankee stack, and I mean dirt cheap Yankee stack, today's the day. Obviously, their implied run total isn't great. They're facing Verlander, awful. But if they get to Verlander early, which some teams have been able to so far, you could be landing on a less than 1% owned Yankee stack that still has guys like Aaron Judge in the lineup, still has guys who are so hot right now. With Gary Sanchez hitting 3 home runs yesterday. Clint Frazier is now back. He should be someone that you could target in the top 6 bats of that lineup. Not something that I would really go towards, but again, if you're playing one lineup in a big GPP, one of the worst run totals predicted on the slate today because of the pitcher they're facing. Verlander is going to have plenty of great and quality starts and potentially Cy Young candidate by the end of the year. But there's going to be starts where he struggles. This Yankees offense would be probably that start where he struggles the most. Another thing that just hurts them is it's not in Yankee Stadium, so it's not as hitter-friendly of a ballpark as Minute Maid Park. But once again, keep an eye on it. That's a spot that I think is a sneaky potential target spot. Obviously, everything about it looks unattractive, the pitcher and the total, but this offense still has the bats to get you there with 4 home runs in your stack. So not the place that I would go if I had a ton of lineups, not the place I would go if I was building 10 lineups and putting them all into a tournament. But if you have one shot and you want to take it there, go for it, because everybody's going to be owning Verlander and nobody's going to be owning Yankee stack. So there's leverage there. It is super risky. And again, the implied team total of 3.4, tied for the worst on the slate, is not something I ever really love to target. But this Yankees team would be the one that I would go after, just in terms of what their raw talent is. And early in the year, I'll bet on talent. But again, it's the Rockies, it's the Atlanta, it's Oakland in terms of just the best overall spots to stack. You can go down to Washington today, who does have a nice matchup against Philadelphia today in Philadelphia. So Harper's going to go right back to Philly once again. Does he hit another home run? We shall see. But they both have pretty nice implied run totals. You can stack that game or either side of that game. In my opinion, I'd probably rather target the Philly side, the Philly bats in this one. So yeah. That is it in terms of just the stacks, the weather. This is the part that I think I like the most so far. And I have just pitchers, stats, database, a little bit more, hitter stats, database that I'm working through. But I like this part right here. It's color coordinated. I wish I can get these I can, some of them. The percentages though, if anybody knows how to do that, let me know. So what I like to do here is I like to just go through and say, okay, this is how the teams are hitting this year compared to what the pitchers have done recently in terms of just all of last year's data. Again, this year's data will come in and refresh as we get more of it to go off of. So this team strikes out a ton. Baltimore strikes out a ton. The guy below them doesn't strike out a lot of guys. So in terms of Marco Estrada, not striking out that great. Worst 4 on the slate, bottom 25% on this slate in terms of striking batters out. So I would not be too scared. Now, I don't want to ever stack Baltimore's offense, or really don't feel like it, but I would not be too scared there in terms of just trying to find a better matchup. And what I was talking about in terms of Houston and New York, if we just kind of highlight this, you have New York striking out at 23% of the time. In terms of the whole slate, they're in the top half in terms of striking out a lot. And then you go up against Justin Verlander, who by far leads the league, or leads this slate in strikeouts through 9 innings, strikeout percentage, and a ton of things in terms of walks as well. He does not walk batters. Now, another stat I should add in here is walk percentage, and I can easily do that and throw that into this sheet once I'm done with this. But he does not walk batters. Obviously, then his K compared to walk is going to go up. His FIP is going to go up. All these things are great for him. His whip is obviously the best on the slate by a wide margin. So when I was saying stack the Yankees offense, look, or when I was saying that it would be a nice contrarian spot, it is not a very attractive spot overall. It depends what that Yankees offense ownership stacks are going to be looking like, because I'm thinking from a sharper or a contrarian standpoint. But there might just be a ton of fish just going to be playing the Yankees guys because they're big names. And if that's the case, you could avoid them. But in terms of stacking, you're not going to get any Yankee stacks today. Verlander at 10-4, by far the best guy on the slate as we talk about the Yankee stacks again. So the price indicates that I'd probably rather save $1,100. And if I'm going to get one expensive pitcher, it'd be mad bum for me. In an overall better spot, the weather doesn't scare me too much. I hope it scares other people off. It will probably not be scaring me. yeah, I think you can go for 8,400 to Vincent Velasquez. He gets some nice K percentages. Overall, he has a nice matchup against this Washington team that strikes out on the slate by far the most, over 2 percentage points more than anybody else. Washington strikes out a ton, 29%, almost 28.6. They're going up against a guy who is second on this slate in terms of strikeout percentage, $8,400. I think that's a fine price point. You can make him your most expensive pitcher if you really wanted to pay up maybe for those core stacks. I think it's really fine here. So that's it. That's more so a primer. Obviously, I know that that was not in depth. That was not as concise as they will be. But once again, I'm not looking at individual player salaries. The way that I approach MLB DFS is I don't enter 150 lineups. I don't have the money to. I don't really want to have the time to in terms of just the quarter contests to sort of master that max entry. I'd rather focus on that more so for the NBA and NFL when they come. Maybe I will for the MLB, but I'm mainly looking at where I can find edges in terms of pitchers, whether that's paying up for a guy and finding one value, whether that's finding 2 value guys so I can pay up in my stacks. And then, like I buried the lead, I want to find stacks. I want to find the stacks that I can play. I probably, if it's an 8-game slate, this is interesting. Park factor, there we go. I don't know why that's saying Vegas. If it's an 8-game slate, I'm going to be stacking. I'm not going to just be having a lineup with 8 individual hitters or 9 individual hitters, whatever it is. What is it? 10 individual hitters, 4, 3, 8 individual hitters. Not going to have a lineup with just 8 individual hitters because that's not going to win on a. You need correlation. You need guys to get a walk, a hit, a home run, and all you get all the points for all that in a stack, right? That's the best correlation in baseball. Is stacking a similar offense and not the 8-9 hitters. Focus on the 2 through 6. The 1 hitter is fine, but they're not going to have an opportunity with men on base guaranteed for at least one time in the game. So yeah, that's the way I approach it. I'm looking for the stacks. I'm looking at Vegas odds, always checking in on weather, and then I'm just breaking down into pitcher stats based on what they're doing compared to how the whole team goes. Because if I'm looking at stacks, I don't want a team that's going to strike out a bunch against a pitcher who, and here we go, backhanded across my own face. I don't want a team who's going to strike out a bunch against a pitcher who strikes out a ton of batters. That is pretty much what's happening today with Justin Verlander against the Yankees. I could walk every single thing I said back about stacking the Yankees. Again, I was not saying as a top recommendation. I was saying that is the spot that if I ever wanted to get the lowest owned Yankees spot because of a brutal matchup, it would be today because they are the one team, I would say probably the most likely team in the league to just explode against a very good pitcher. So yeah, that is it. That is a bold call, I would say, for the Yankees, but that is it. You have Coors Field here, obvious stack spot. I think Oakland's in a great spot. I think Vincent Velasquez is one of the better pitchers on the slate based on price, based on the fact that he's going to be going up against this 28.6% K rate team in Washington. And he does have a nice K through 9, at least last year, 9.89. So that is it right now. If you want this, it is free today. I'll make it free for today. Just get in the Discord, and I will drop it into the Discord in the MLB channel. If you want it any other day and for the rest of the season, and there will be more coming to it, you can go on to Patreon. There's a link down below. So my name's Sal. Best of luck today, everybody. Again, sorry if this wasn't as concise. I was just trying to get a video out. I don't really have an MLB format yet. Just walk through this with you guys. Helps me out. Hope it helps you out. Let me know down below if it does. Peace out.